Hello, this is Anthony G. Martin of the Liberty Sphere Report. There's news coming out of Alaska today. A federal judge has granted a temporary injunction halting the certification of the vote for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by Rhino Lisa Murkowski. As you well know, the Tea Party candidate in that Senate race in Alaska was Joe Miller. Joe Miller mounted a very successful campaign to unseat Senator Murkowski, who is a liberal and who often sides with the Democrats when it comes to important issues like earmarks, pork barrel spending, and the like. Thus, conservatives and Tea Party people got in behind the candidacy of Joe Miller. However, Murkowski, who refused to go silently into that deep good night, refused to concede and instead pulled out and mounted a write-in campaign against Joe Miller. She claims that she won that race based upon the count of the write-ins. However, Joe Miller and his attorneys claim that there are serious questions concerning the validity of many of those votes. And state law apparently was not adhered to. The federal judge who reviewed the case seems to agree. In issuing his injunction to stop the certification of the vote, the judge said that Joe Miller had raised very serious issues concerning the validity of those votes, and that he referred the matter out of the federal courts back to the state courts. However, the state law in Alaska is very clear. The names for write-in candidates must match specifically and perfectly the name the way it was presented when the candidate filed to run for that particular office. In so many instances on those ballots, people wrote in incorrect names. There are incorrect spellings, and the state election officials in Alaska gave great leeway to these people, even though the law clearly states that Murkowski's name must be spelled correctly the way she spells it when she files for an office that she wishes to run for. Now, this matter is going to go to the state court. At this point, we have no idea how it's going to turn out. Of course, Senator Murkowski is claiming victory. She's been all over the airwaves, blasting Sarah Palin, blasting the Tea Party, and claiming that America doesn't need a movement based upon such anger. Well, Senator Murkowski, the citizens are angry, and you are part of the problem. The reason why the Tea Party got in behind Joe Miller is because they're sick and tired of earmark types of earmark proponents such as yourself. And all across the country, the voters made that perfectly clear. They want things to change in Washington. They do not want business as usual. They want the new Congress to end earmarked spending. They want the new Congress to balance the budget. They want to reduce the national debt, which is unsustainable. It is so high. And they also want to make tax cuts permanent, because to raise taxes on those who produce the wealth and provide the jobs is exactly the opposite of the way things should come about when you're attempting to deal with a deep recession, the worst since the Great Depression. Raising taxes on anybody is the last thing we need to do in such an economic scenario. And yet Democrats and rhinos have often stated that they want to either roll back or end the Bush tax cuts altogether. My friends, make no mistake. If those tax cuts are allowed to expire by the end of December, you, all of you, are going to see the biggest tax hike in American history. Is that what you want? Is that the way that we should go in the middle of a recession? Do we really want to hamstring people who create the jobs and produce the wealth in this country? The ones that we all depend on for our jobs. and for what we have. This attitude is asinine, and Murkowski is part of that left wing in the Republican Party, what I call the rhinos, the Republicans in name only, who team with the ruling elite in the Democratic Party in Washington. We don't need her in Washington. We need a change. The laws were not adhered to in the state of Alaska. This points to election and voter fraud. We have seen it happening all across America with regard to Harry Reid's successful U.S. Senate bid in Nevada, and there are many, many questions raised about the validity of those votes because there was a massive power outage the day of the vote, and guess what? SEIU, the union members who clearly support the Democratic candidates, socialism and Marxism, endorsed Harry Reid. They're the ones who serviced those voting machines in Nevada. And suddenly, and without any prior warning, Reid pulls it off some way, somehow, when all the polls showed that his opponent was ahead in that race. Now, there are other races around the nation that raise serious issues about electioneering, election tampering, voter fraud, voter intimidation. We've told you about all that. This all ties together, and as I told you before, this is a nationwide problem. It is a nationwide travesty of justice. It makes our voting system the laughingstock of the world. It raises serious issues about the honesty of those who count the votes, who service the machines, and who certify votes all across the country. And the word that I'm getting is that a major scandal is getting ready to break forth in this country if the powers that be and the ruling class decide to pursue it, that points to massive fraud with regard to elections on the part of the Democratic Party, particularly when it comes to the left-wing nutcases that run the government in the Congress and in the White House. And so often judges are helping them do it. So kudos to the judge, the federal judge in Alaska, who called a halt to the certification of the vote in Alaska. No, Senator Murkowski, you are not yet the official winner of that race. You are not until the state certifies that election, which they cannot do until these serious issues are ironed out within the Alaska court system. It is to be hoped that the good folk in Alaska who oversee elections will adhere to state law and give the election rightfully to Joe Miller, who won that race hands down. And we can only hope and pray that that will be the outcome of this sorry and sordid and scandalous situation. This is Anthony G. Martin of the Liberty Sphere Report. I will give you more updates as they become available.